I mean, the question I have is, I think the point you already raised a little bit earlier, fake news. And I think we've just had an example in the United States of America where arguably fake news has brought a president to power. Would you call that in some way a subversion of the democratic process? Because you've got something happening in social media where, based on certain false premises, a party and a ruler or a leader has come to power. And given that this is, I think this interview of yours was a couple of years ago, and the internet penetration is actually quadrupled probably in India. I'm just exaggerating to make a point. But fact is that social media has become a very, very big, important form of communication. And we had our Prime Minister on Friday address all the members of his party and told them to all be actively involved in social media. Is there a real danger of something worse happening in India than it's already happening in terms of social media and its impact? Can we get fake news bringing in fake leaders?
We already have fake news all over social media in India, as we said earlier in our conversation. The Prime Minister certainly has taken this up to an art form. He's done a magnificent job of not only acquiring followers, but using the techniques of every available media. And not just modern social media, he even uses relatively old-fashioned media like radio with his monthly broadcasts. So I have a lot of respect for the way in which he has multiplied every way of entering people's consciousness to an extent that probably was not available to many of the earlier leaders. And undoubtedly, he's well on his way to becoming India's best-known political leader of all time, simply because everybody has some access or the other to something he said, something, either they've heard him, they've read him, they've seen him, they've watched him, whatever it may be. And that is going to be a significant development. And I've been saying to my own party leadership that they have to shed their diffidence about appearing on media, because that is very much the way forward. And it is striking, when I joined government in 2009, government computers were actually barred from accessing social media. I couldn't go on my Twitter account or my Facebook from my government computer. I had to wait till I got home. And what was interesting about that is how far we've come to a point in which every minister, even if he or she were not inclined to do so, has been obliged by the Prime Minister to open an account. And they're all tweeting or having staff tweet for them and putting out messages all the time. And social media has also become an instrument of governance, where you're seeing, for example, people tweeting from their railway compartment saying, my father's just had a heart attack, and somebody in the railway ministry makes sure that by the next station there are doctors waiting, and this kind of thing has actually happened.
Sure.
Or Sushma Swaraj responding to people on Twitter who've lost their passports or are stuck in foreign countries or suffered some tragedy or accident elsewhere, and so on and so forth. All of this has shown you the transformation. I remember in 2009, again, October or so, when I was in the middle of all these Twitter controversies, giving an interview to a journalist, Harinder Baweja, then of Tehelka, in which I said that within 10 years, every serious politician would be on Twitter. I didn't realize I wouldn't have to wait 10 years.
Sure.
I mean, within 5 or 6, that has become absolutely widespread in India. What are the dangers? The dangers of fake news are always there. And when you get so much of unfiltered information, unless you are intellectually equipped to filter it through your own reading and awareness and discernment, or you decide that you will only trust certain sources and not others, then you're bound to get a certain amount of disinformation. One of the alarming things about this fake news phenomenon is the extent to which people believe things, sincerely perhaps, that are simply not true and act on it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, it transforms the sort of Madison Avenue thing that perception is the only reality. That it doesn't matter if something that you are told actually never happened.
Yeah.
As long as you believe it happened for you. And you can act on that basis, vote on that basis, choose your leaders.
Literally a virtual world.
That is very worrying.
Yeah.
On the positive side, of course, it does make it more difficult, it seems to me, to impose a dictatorship on our country, because there will always be all these multiple sources of information far too proliferated to be curbed. And everybody will be, retailing all sorts of different versions of the same facts that the government wants you to believe. So hopefully you will be able to overcome the risk of just one view, one version, one story prevailing.
I'm not a proponent of curtailing freedoms, but I do think that, and I think I want your opinion on it more than anything, isn't it time to ask the Facebooks of the world who are cognizant of this in the context of what just happened in the US to actually, make some adjustments to how they operate to kind of filter out fake news? And I think there is a discussion going on that.
There is a discussion going on. Facebook has already said they'll try and do this, but there's some real problems. First of all, there are fact-checking sites now. The US has probably the world leader in fact-check sites, so we've got 2 or 3 in India as well. And strictly speaking, for every fact that is claimed, you could go and check on but it takes time and trouble, and very few people bother. I think in the US is factcheck.com, factcheck.org, I can't remember which one it is. And in India, there's factchecker.com. So these are fairly easy names to remember, and you can quickly go and check. On that basis, if somebody is retailing a lie, Facebook and so on could be able to take it off. But the problem is, does this mean we want Facebook to have the equivalent of China's internet police? China has something like 300,000 people whose full-time job is to scour the internet to take down subversive comments. So somebody writes something against the Communist Party in China in Chinese on a blog, the internet police will catch him and take it down and go after him. Whereas you don't really want Facebook doing that. First of all, it would take more than 300,000 people, because there are, God knows, 1 billion people on Facebook today.
Sure.
And they're each posting multiple times a day. So I don't even know if it's possible. You could, I suppose, have algorithms that will filter out the more prominent fake news stories. But I just don't think that, as I was saying earlier about dictatorship, I just don't think censorship is even technologically possible beyond a certain point, because it's too easy to bypass. I mean, there are countries, for example, like Saudi Arabia and others, which have got their own restrictions on the internet. China too, by the way, where you can only go on certain approved sites, and pornography is one thing that is often excluded. But everybody in Saudi Arabia wants to access pornography, goes through a different server, and they get it. In China, for example, I remember the last time I was there, which was about 2-3 years ago, for a conference. The interpreter assigned to me was a very bright young girl who was studying international relations. And she was very interested, because I was willing to say rather bold things, which is why I've never been invited to China again. And apparently the things I was saying were the talk of gossip amongst the interpreters, because they were so quote-unquote courageous. And she writes to me on Gmail, except that Gmail is banned in China. Gmail is banned in China, and when I was trying to access my own mail, during the days I was in China, I had no way of accessing my email. So I asked her, how do you do it? And she said, oh, we find a VPN,
Yes.
virtual private network,
Yep.
and then we can go on Gmail and contact you.
Sure.
So if even in China, ruled by one-party communist dictatorship, they're able to do that, who is going to be able to impose one view on the world? Not happening.
Okay, on to politics a little bit. And I think it was interesting to hear you speak, how impressed you are with the way the Prime Minister has done his